Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news. It's huge. Manchester United protests against the Glazers are planned. Great news, absolutely fantastic news. We'll get into that. In relation to transfer news, price set for Victor OSIMHEN. Manchester United definitely interested in OSIMHEN. We'll delve into that because there's other clubs looking at him as well. I still think that Harry Kane is the most likely target for Manchester United, but Victor OSIMHEN definitely in there. We've got an update on Martinez, who's actually had surgery on his injury. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, well, it's probably a bad thing technically, but we know that he's out for the season anyway, so I don't think it will make a massive amount of difference on his recovery. So all the best to Lisandro. Also, Sabitzer, bits of an update on him as well. Lots to get into on the show this morning. But look, we're going to start off. We're going to talk about Victor OSIMHEN because there is a story coming out of Germany. Some of you might not remember that Victor OSIMHEN actually did play in Germany. I think he was at Wolfsburg for a little bit. Then he went to Belgium. Then he was in France, and now he's in Italy. Premier League hopefully next, but he's not opposed apparently to a move back to the Bundesliga and Bayern Munich. We'll talk about the price, we'll talk about United's role, we'll talk about the clubs that are interested, and why Manchester United will probably miss out on OSIMHEN, and it's got nothing to do with the price tag and everything to do with the ease of going for Kane over OSIMHEN. So stay tuned for that. We'll definitely delve into that. That's the big story. Also, Evan Ferguson, a bit of a blow around that. Yeah, we'll talk about him as well. Obviously, he's not going to be playing against Man United on Sunday. He's got an injury, but about to sign a new contract for Brighton, so there'll be no move this summer. But look, maybe longer term, he's a player United could look at. But let's look at something that I think is really close to all our hearts, the sale of Manchester United. There was a lot of talk yesterday about the Glazers being confident that they can take on investment and that they can stay at Manchester United. Now, if you missed any show yesterday, my response to that, and I think a lot of people agreed, which is great, is that this story that the Glazers are going to stay is actually a nonsense. Therefore, reacting to it, protests, anger, frustration is good, but actually I think just plays into their hands. I do not think for 1 minute they're planning on staying. Personally, I think this is about getting the price up. As I said, if your car's on the drive and somebody won't give you the price you want, you put it out there that somebody else wants to buy it and you hope that that person wants it enough to up their price. It's just typical sale tactics. However, I don't think they can stay anyway. We're in debt. They need to spend billions on the club. Why would they dilute their ownership in the club to allow somebody else to come in? They won't get any dividends. They've lived off dividends for 17 years. There's no Glazer model to stay. I think they'd like to stay, but they know that they can't stay. However, if you poke the tiger, don't be surprised if you get clawed or attacked. And basically that's the response that we were hinting at yesterday that we knew would come, and lo and behold, it is coming. The Glazers have set a deadline for final bids for Manchester United of the 28th. Manchester United play Aston Villa at the end of this month. There will be huge anti-Glazer protests before and during that game held by Manchester United fans again. Now, we've seen plenty of these protests over the last 2 years, really. I think it was 2 years ago that the Super League happened, wasn't it? So, but we've certainly seen a lot of anti-Glazer protests at Manchester United over the last 12 months, and this could be one of the biggest ones yet, because you know what, as we said last night, if the Glazers decided to stay at Manchester United, they would announce it at the start of June, because there's no games. And one thing that really makes it easier for United fans to arrange a protest is a home game at Old Trafford, and you don't have that post end of May. So I think this is great news, because ultimately any opposition, in a democratic society, should be able to protest. You see it in London all the time. You see it all around the world. Groups of people who are opposed to something. We don't always agree with those stances, but ultimately, in a democratic society, the right to protest in an organised and non-violent way should always be allowed. And the United protests have always been like that. I know there was a game that got cancelled against Liverpool. That was Super League orientated. It was frustration, but since then, they've been organised really well. They've united the fan base. And I think that this is absolutely fantastic news because it's so well timed. And it was always going to happen. I don't know what the Glazers thought would happen if stories started to come out. And Gary Neville's absolutely correct as well. This is meant to be a confidential, highly secret sale process. And yet we keep hearing that the investment arm that want to invest and not buy there's confidence there. The whole process is just about the Glazers making money. But as I said, you stick your nose in a beehive, don't moan when you get stung. And they're about to get stung big time, because those protests are going to be massive, and they are going to be 100% about full sale. Get out of our club. We don't want you here. And the thing about the protests in the past as well that you've got to remember is these protests in the past were being done because because fans want the Glazers gone. The Glazers have put the club up for sale in November, and they're now saying that they might not go. So they flirted with the fan base that they're going to go, and now they're sort of trying to make out that they're not going to go. I tell you, I have got no sympathy. I don't think anybody's got any sympathy, because you've hinted at going, and now you're pretending that you're not going to go. What did you think United fans were going to do? Just sit, well, let's just sit back and see. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's go down the local, have a pint, and let's see what happens. Absolutely not. People are raging. People are impatient. People want them to go. And these protests, which will hit mainstream media, will be, we've covered all the protests. We will give all the details out. We will let you know. We will cover it. We will put it out there because it's massively important. And look, maybe in the past there is, and maybe there still are. Sorry, I've just dropped something that was quite therapeutic to rub. I don't know where it's gone. That's frustrating. But yeah, maybe in the past, I think that, look, we are inclusive, diverse. We want everybody to get involved. That's just the way United Stand is. Sometimes when you've got a big community, people get jealous of it, I suppose. They don't like it. That's absolutely fine. I think there are certain elements of the fan base that can be quite, what's superior? I think the word's superior. They think they're better than everybody. They think they speak for everybody. They think that they're, better than other people. But ultimately, this is not about that. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter whether you like another United fan. We're talking about the removal of a toxic element that's been here for 17 years and destroyed this football club. No fan, whether you like them or not, has had such a negative impact on this football club than the Glazers. Saying you don't want Magaluf to play at centre-back is not the same as letting the ground rot for 17 years. Saying that you think Bruno is better than Pogba isn't the same as taking dividends out every year. There's a level to what the Glazers have done. And if that can't unite everybody, that they can put everything aside to get to a point where this football club will obviously be better, whoever you want to own the club, this is massive. And I would not be surprised now if the Glazers actually admitted they're selling the club, because we are still a couple of weeks away from the Villa game. This is going to grow and grow and grow. I mean, we're not going to shut up about it. You're not going to shut up about it. The protesters aren't going to shut up about it. It's just going to grow and grow and grow over the next 2 weeks, and the share price is going to drop and drop and drop. And the Elliott Group, the Carlisle Group, and every other bloody group, even you two, everyone's going to know about it, and it's going to be squeaky bum time. So look, it's perfectly well timed. It's why I wasn't worried yesterday, and it's a glimpse of what's to come. If United fans are going to protest massively about a hint that the Glazers are thinking of staying, imagine what it would be like if they did. And you ain't never making money out of this football club again when the fan base doesn't want you here. And I think emptying the stadium has always been a silly idea, because if you've been to Old Trafford, it's very difficult to do that, because there is season ticket holders that have been there for years. There's also transient fans who are coming in. It's like Mecca, isn't it? It's like, lots of match days at Old Trafford. There's a lot of fans there who are coming there for the first time. So it's very difficult to empty Old Trafford. But it's not difficult to, abandon buying shirts or merch or stuff like that. And those things will step up. So I think, actually, this is great. This is fan power. This is what we want. It's a message. And I think that this will ultimately lead to the full sale that I've always been confident will be achieved. I don't know who's going to buy the club, but I think we will achieve a full sale. And I think, again, this is a great story to lead on before we talk about OSIMHEN, because this is fantastic, because this just shows that this fan base, whoever you are, whatever you think of each other, has had enough, collectively had enough. And he's not just going to sit back there like maybe we have done or we've been forced to over the last 17 years. We're not just going to sit back there and quietly accept the Glazers manipulating another way to bring more mercenaries into this football club and run it into the ground. This is not going to happen without a vocal fight, and that vocal fight will be visible because everybody will make it visible. And I just think before that Villa game, I think we'll know that the Glazers are being sold, because if they're not thinking of selling, they cannot allow that sort of a protest to be in place before they get investment, because the investors will just go, what the hell's going on here? And actions speak louder than words. Maybe the Glazers have said to these investors, oh, don't worry about the fans. We've been manipulating them for 17 years. They'll forget about it as soon as we've done the deal with you. Well, that's not going to happen. I'm sure Ten Hag would love them to go. These owners are holding our potential under this manager and those within the club and fan base who want glory, says JT. And green and gold until the Glazers go. Get out our club, says Rory. Well, get your Norwich scarves out, because that's what people always mock us with, isn't it? But ultimately, who gives a shit? The reality is there's plenty of home games left at Old Trafford before the end of the season. And the timing of this sale by the Glazers, if they want to play silly buggers, is going to coincide with some very, very big messages. And also, it won't just be protests out the ground. I think there'll be a lot more other stuff going on. And as I said, I just think the Glazers have just... Look, somebody told me a couple of weeks ago that people at the Rain Group were not happy with the Glazers and the way they've done this sale. They keep changing things around because ultimately they want more money. If the Rain Group had been allowed to sell this football club, it would have been done very differently. But the Glazers keep changing things. I think this is just another example of their complete and utter lack of business acumen. They inherited their money from their dad. Their dad was the reason that Man United was bought. Their dad is the reason that they're rich. They're just, they're just silly business people who have, manipulated a football club for too long and actually think they're quite clever. And what they've done is they've put hints out there that they're going to stay to try and get Althani and Sir Jim to bid higher. And it's going to bite them on the arse big time. Because what they've done is they've basically poked the tiger, poked the beehive, and now they're going to go, oh, no, we didn't mean it. We are really up for sale. We didn't mean it. And that's what's going to happen. And mark my words, over some point over the next 2 weeks, before that big protest, there will be a big story saying that the Glazers are selling, because it's backfired. And, I hope Althani and Sir Jim don't fall into it and say, look, we're not increasing the bid to 6 billion. Your offer is this. Take it or leave it. Because people get worried by that. But I think the power is with Sir Jim. It is with Althani. The Glazers are not in a strong position. They have to sell. They've got a fan base that loathes them. They've got a fan base that will not let them stay. They've got to sell. But they think they're in power. They think they can manipulate Sir Jim and Althani. They think they can manipulate the fan base. They think they can pretend to stay and it'll be fine. And what's happened is they pretended to stay, and actually everyone's going, it's like the boy or girl who cries wolf, isn't it? You've done it too many times, and now people are like, yeah, we're not falling for it. Yeah, we're not going to fall for it. So great news, absolutely great news that there's going to be planned protests at the end of the month, and I think they will continue and they will ramp up, because ultimately the Glazers have poked the tiger again, and that's just completely and utterly naive. They may be rich, they may have control of this football club, but their power is dwindling, and they're vulnerable. And look, there's just absolutely no way they're staying at this football club and taking on investment from more greedy people. It's just going to absolutely go crazy. I mean, look, never say never. There may be an angle for them to do that, but if they do it, it's not like everyone's going to sit back and accept it, is it? So watch this space. We'll certainly keep you updated with what's going on that, and if you're planning on going to protests, or you're going to be the game, or there's stuff going on elsewhere, online, anything like that, obviously we'll keep you updated, because I think there's going to be a lot going on until they sell the club. Malp says it's famous last words. Mate, it won't be famous last words though, is it? Because if the Glazers stay, it's not like you or I or anyone else is just going to go, oh well, they're staying. It won't stop. I think this is the point. It's not going to stop. It's going to continue on and on and on and on. Let's talk about transfer news anyway. Let's move on, because obviously there is the big story around what's the future of the football club, but there's also the short-term story of what's happening this season, and also what's going to happen in the summer transfer window, which is obviously massively affected by what's going to happen with the sale. But coming out of Germany today, Plettigol talking about Victor Osimhen. Well, let's actually talk about two players. Let's talk about Evan Ferguson, and let's talk about Victor Osimhen. Now, in relation to Evan Ferguson, he is certainly a player that United admire. And I think logically, at some point in the future, it makes a massive amount of sense for Manchester United to try and buy him. But the news is, and it has been for a couple of weeks, is that he will sign a new contract at Brighton. Look, I don't have a massive problem with Evan Ferguson staying at Brighton for a couple of years and then coming to Manchester United. And we've got no divine right to say that he will come to Manchester United. I just think I'd love to see him at Manchester United. I think it'd be a fantastic signing. But as we've seen with Darwin Núñez, I personally think Darwin Núñez should have stayed at Benfica for another year. I think Enzo Fernandez should have stayed at Benfica till at least the summer as well. But what we're seeing more and more of in football at the moment is that clubs are taking players early. We did it with Rooney at Everton. Sometimes clubs take players early because they're so talented and the competition is so big. So look, him saying another season at Brighton's absolutely fine as long as we're front of queue when he does leave Brighton, because I think he's a fantastic talent. But if Evan Ferguson stays at Brighton for another season, it's not like he's playing at Southampton and getting relegated. He's playing for one of the best footballing sides in Europe, developing in a system that isn't going to harm him. So look, Evan Ferguson this summer, forget about it. I don't think it's going to happen. It looks like he's going to sign a new contract. But Victor Osimhen, few stories coming out this morning, and I suppose the best way is to summarise them. So coming out of Germany, Bayern Munich really do want Osimhen. They need a striker. We saw it last week against Man City. For most of that game, Bayern Munich had the better possession, but they just couldn't harm or lay a punch on Man City because they don't have a striker since Lewandowski's gone. They have been linked to Harry Kane. They do want Victor Osimhen, and Bayern Munich probably can manipulate a situation where they could raise the price which has been set by Napoli, which is around 100 million euros. Now, I think this is the most important thing to remember about Victor Osimhen. People are pricing Manchester United out of a move and pushing us towards Harry Kane. I'm going to tell you a little story prediction here. I'm going to say Harry Kane and Victor Osimhen will go for roughly the same price. I'm tired of hearing people saying Kane is the cheaper option at 80 million because Osimhen will cost 120. It will be a lot closer than that. There's not going to be a £40 million gap between Harry Kane and Osimhen. There's not a bargain and an overprice here. They're going to be a lot closer. I personally, it'd be interesting to see, I personally think the price of Harry Kane and the price of Victor Osimhen will be less than 20 million apart. I'm tempted to say even 10. Well, if it's around 20 million difference, please tell me why you'd sign Kane over Osimhen. Osimhen's 24, Harry Kane's 30. We're trying to build something for the future. Now, whether you think Harry Kane's better than Osimhen or not, that's a debate, but I think they offer very different things, but they're going to be very close in price. So let's not pretend one's going to be cheaper than the other. I think the price will be a lot closer than people think. Chelsea want Osimhen. Bayern want Osimhen. Manchester United definitely want Osimhen. I don't know whether that's breaking news for some people or not. I think some of our fan base seem to think that Osimhen's more of a fan requirement than a club requirement. Manchester United have scouted Victor Osimhen extensively, and that scouting has increased massively since Erik ten Hag came into the club. So read into that what you want. Victor Osimhen is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of Erik ten Hag's priority targets as a striker. Now, I wouldn't be naive enough to say that he's ahead of Harry Kane, because a lot of journalists have been reporting over the last few weeks that Harry Kane is the priority for Manchester United. Now, whether you like that or not, it might well be the case. But it would also be massively naive to say that Victor Osimhen is a distant fourth or fifth target. He's right up there, and he is a player that Manchester United actually approached Napoli about last August. They were completely priced out of it. Napoli wanted us to pay Ronaldo's loan fee to replace Victor Osimhen, and they wanted 100 million. So imagine that. We would have had to pay Ronaldo $500,000 a week to play for Napoli, and 100 million plus Napoli's wages for Osimhen as well. So it would have been a ridiculous price to do, but we got priced out of João Felix in August, and he ended up going on loan in January, as we know. Ultimately, Man United got quoted ridiculous prices by a ridiculous amount of clubs in late August, and we ended up paying ridiculous money for Anthony, as we know, because we were desperate. But we did approach Napoli about Osimhen, and that was very much in the reign of Erik ten Hag. So Where the situation is with Victor Osimhen is that the price that Napoli are setting is around 100 million. So that's the same price that Harry Kane is being quoted at by Spurs. But it's around £100 million for Victor Osimhen this summer. And the general consensus is that if Bayern Munich were to get him, they won't pay a silly price, so it will be around 100. And if Chelsea get him, as much as Chelsea do pay stupid money, their price will be around £100 million as well. So the price set for Victor Osimhen is set to be around 100, not around 150, not around 125, £100 million. It's going to be around that. But Bayern Munich and Chelsea are very, very interested. Now, look, Manchester United want him. I personally think that the reason Man United won't get Osimhen is got nothing to do with the price. It's got nothing to do with Harry Kane being the answer and Victor Osimhen not. I think this will come down to, unfortunately, the same problem we've had for years. This comes down to whoever the director of football is, whoever the negotiator is, and whoever the CEO is. Because it's not always been the same as what we've got now. We are incapable of going toe-to-toe with a club like Bayern Munich and a club like Chelsea for a player like that. And that is why we will miss out. We won't miss out because we're priced out. And we won't miss out because he doesn't want to come to Manchester United. We actually are probably the stronger team. We've probably got the bigger appeal. We've got Chelsea, who are going through transition and won't even be in Europe. You've got Bayern Munich, who are it's a one-horse town. And you've got Man United, who are in the best league in the world, will be in the Champions League, and obviously it's Manchester United. So realistically, we've got a better chance, arguably, than those two clubs. We can certainly go head-to-head. But the problem is we haven't got the negotiating team that those two teams have got. And that is ultimately why I think we will go for Harry Kane. Because Bayern Munich can't get Harry Kane because he doesn't want to leave the Premier League. And Chelsea can't get Harry Kane because he can't really go to a London club. So I think United will go... I think United are basically going to convince themselves that Harry Kane's the better deal. And maybe it is. Look, I'm not here to say that Kane's bad. As I say, he's world class. But United will go for Harry Kane because it's easier. It'll take longer. Funnily enough, I think Osimhen will be wearing a Chelsea shirt before Harry Kane's wearing a Man United shirt. But we'll go for Harry Kane because there's nobody else to compete with apart from Daniel Levy. Osimhen, I think, ends up in a Chelsea shirt. Maybe a Bayern Munich shirt, but I don't think he ends up in a Man United shirt. I just don't see fans making actual sacrifices that would have any real impact. They just can't keep themselves from buying merch, going to matches, etc. Says Gallus. There is a watch along tonight, yes, Faradun. Just on that, I suppose we're going back to the protests. I think the protests will be big enough to concern the Glazers and any investor trying to prop them up. Look, whether United fans could be better at certain other things, I've never been a big advocate of emptying the stadium. I think it's very, very difficult to do. I think there's certain things we could do better around, other tactics, of course. But I think that when we're in a sale process, and I still think the Glazers are selling anyway, I think a big protest just to remind them of the anti-Glazer feeling at the club should be enough to give them a wake-up call that they need to go. Ultimately, I'm not going to say that more needs to be done than a huge protest against Aston Villa, because I think that in itself will send a very big message to the media. I mean, ultimately any protest is about impact, isn't it? It's about will it be on Sky? Will it be on TalkSport? Will it be on the BBC? Will it be on the national? Will it make national news in America and India and everywhere else? And I think it will. And I think it will make a big impact. And I think that the positive thing is that we're waking up to the fact that there is going to be protests, because the worst thing would be to not do anything, and that was never going to happen. So look, I think it's a positive, and I think it will have a big impact, because ultimately the Glazers are about money and they won't like the fact that the share price is dropping. Name me once Kane delivered in a big game, says Yash. Well, look, talking about Kane against Osimhen, you know where I stand on this. I think Osimhen suits us better, but I'm not the manager. Eric Ten Hag is. Dion, welcome. Thanks for being a member for 21 months. But what I would say is that I just don't think Manchester United... I'll tell you what, actually, I'll say it this way. If we get new ownership, I think we've got a great chance of getting Victor Osimhen. If we are still messing around with this sale in the summer, I think we're 100% going to go for Harry Kane. Because Harry Kane, to me, represents the Glazers. And I know that's really harsh on Harry Kane, but it's not. I'm not talking about Harry Kane, really. Harry Kane, signing Harry Kane represents every transfer we've done in the last 10 years. It's dragged out, we overpay on wages, and as I say, it takes all summer and all the excitement gets drained out of it. And there's loads of transfers like that. Harry Maguire, Paul Pogba, Bruno Fernandes, Jadon Sancho, even Anthony last year. This is a Glazer type signing. One horse race as well. Who else wanted Anthony? Who else wanted Harry Maguire? Who else wanted Bruno? Who else wanted Sancho? Who else wanted Pogba? There was no race. It was just our pace, our slow pace on a transfer that was really exciting, and we took ages on it. And Harry Kane will just be another one added to that list. New ownership, maybe you do become better at transfers. Maybe you go, well, no, I don't want to spend all summer chasing Harry Kane and we're the only club doing it. I want what Bayern are going for. I want what Chelsea are going for. So maybe new ownership helps us with that. My feeling is this. I think if you want to be the best, you've got to beat the best. And that's not just on the football pitch. It's off the pitch as well. How is it acceptable for Harry Kane to be wearing a Man United shirt next season and Victor Osimhen to be wearing a Chelsea shirt? When you look at the success we've had and they've had this year, we should be getting the number one striker, not Chelsea. So I think if you want to be the best, Victor Osimhen's got to wear a Man United shirt next season. But that's my opinion. There will be people in the chat saying, well, I actually think if Harry Kane's wearing the shirt, we've got the best. And that's absolutely fine. That's just opinion. But Mark, why did you... Here we go, Mojo. Why did you isolate Maguire again for his performance at the weekend? He was better than Lindelof and didn't put a foot wrong. Mojo, can you please just stop commenting on the chat? You know, we actually try to have intelligent and opinionated conversations on here. We've spoken about serious matters like the protests and who should be our striker next year, and you've just spewed diarrhea all over the live chat. Football's not for you, Mojo. Do one. Anyway, I gave Maguire a 6. You know what? I think the nonsense that gets put out there on social media about my player ratings is absolutely ridiculous. You turbo prat. I gave McTominay a 7 last game, which is better than is good, and I gave Maguire a 6, which is average. When really, he was bloody hugging their striker on the floor in the first couple of minutes instead of defending properly, and he gave a penalty away. So I gave him a 6. So I don't know what people are talking about. But Lindelof was on a different level to Harry Maguire. That's why I gave him a better score. And actually, I think I gave Lindelof a 7 and Maguire a 6. So some people would say the gap should have been bigger. But I thought Lindelof was flawless on Sunday. And that's why I gave him a higher score, if you want an honest answer. Talking about centre-backs, Victor Osimhen, no. Lisandro Martinez has put a picture out of himself in hospital recovering from an operation. As we know, it wasn't his Achilles tendon that was the injury. Thank God for that, because that could have been a 6-monther. It was a broken foot in his bone. Now, a broken bone in his foot. Now, David Beckham had this before a World Cup in 2002. I think Wayne Rooney had it before a World Cup in 2006. They both played in that World Cup with about a 6-week gap between the two. And they didn't have operations. Martinez has had an operation on his foot. That in itself is a concern, because obviously you want, if you need an operation to put the break right, you'd rather it was just healing naturally. But sometimes they'll look at it and go, look, we can fix this. We can make it heal better by having the operation. He'll be out for longer, but we'll make it heal better. I don't know. But to be honest, it doesn't make a massive amount of difference, because it's the middle of April and he doesn't need to train again until the start of July, pre-season. So Martinez is out of his operation. He's now got, 10 weeks to recuperate from an operation to be back in pre-season training at the start of July. So we wish Martinez all the best. We know he's out for the season. And that's very, very sad news, but he will be back for the start of next season. That's just the way it's going to go. So I've got a really tickly throat. I think I'm getting hay fever, last night my nose started to run for no reason. I'm now getting a tickly throat. It's that time of year, isn't it? I think something's happened with the hay or allergies. I think I'm starting to get hay fever. Piss off. Anyway, So what about Varane? Well, look, people, Amel says poor Martinez, get well soon, says Jed. Look, he's out for the season. We know he's out for the season. It's very, very disappointing, but to hear that he's had an operation and that, what does it really matter? As long as he's back for the new season. We knew he was out for this season. Wish him all the best for the recovery, and we're going to miss him, but he was never going to be back this season anyway, and he will be back for pre-season. As for Varane, I mean, congratulations to Varane. I saw yesterday that he's had another child. Not him personally, that would be defying science, but his wife has had another child. So congratulations to Varane today. That's not why he's missing games, of course. He's injured. I think we heard 3 weeks with Varane. So hopefully, Varane, we might be looking at Varane maybe with a little bit of luck, we might see Varane actually back for that Villa game at the end of the season, which is at the end of April, which is 12 days away. I mean, that might be a little bit of a push. But what I would say about Varane, if we can get through Sevilla and we can get through Brighton, he will be back for the semi-finals and the cup final. So, yeah, that's what we've got to look to with Varane. With someone like Varane, we know he's had a few injury problems. He's actually been very, very, very good this season, but you can't risk it. I think the telling thing for Varane against Forest was that Ten Hag said, not Forest, Sevilla, when he went off, Ten Hag said after the game, this is a problem with his ankle he's had for the last couple of weeks. So he'd obviously been playing with the problem anyway. I think it's important we sort this problem out. Mark, there was people actually stood with bags of merch chanting Glazers out with us. What can you do with people that just don't get it, says the great British clothing company. Well, everybody's different. I think, sometimes I think that when you're trying to create a common goal of removing the Glazers from the club, we're all going to have different things. Like, it amazes me. I was down the pub a couple of weeks ago and one of the lads said he watches the One Show. Now, I was all for going on a different table and leaving him. But everybody said, well, actually, everybody's different. Ultimately, the most important thing in this fan base at the moment is that everybody wants the Glazers out. You need to utilise everybody. You can't be victimising and discarding people, because that weakens your voice. Everybody wants the Glazers to go. Now, whether people are stood there with a bag of merch or not, ultimately, is it a voice that's anti-Glazer? Yes. And only through education can you help these people, but ultimately it's also about individual choice. I remember many times over the last few years, new kits have come out, and I've said, why are people getting excited about this? We're literally still owned by the Glazers, and everyone's going, oh, it's a beautiful kit, I'm going to buy it. I find that quite frustrating. I haven't bought any kits this season at all. Now, Seb had a Ronaldo one the season before. I felt guilty about that, but Ronaldo I knew wouldn't be here for long, and I wanted him to have a Ronaldo shirt. I didn't do it this year. My daughter supports United. She normally likes the third kit. She wanted the lime kit. I didn't get it. I didn't say no. I just said, oh, that's interesting, and then you hope that they forget about it. But that's a personal thing. And there is a guilt attached to that because they're kids, and why shouldn't they have a United kit? But ultimately, it's a little thing, isn't it? And I think everybody's got a right to do what they want to do. But the more important thing for me is that I don't think there's a United fan out there, whether they've just bought a United kit or not, that doesn't want the Glazers to go. And it's how you harness that voice. I get your point, but the One Show, get him out, Mark, says what? Well, why don't I like the One Show? I've never liked the One Show, and the fact that they have Ronan Keating and Jermaine Genius as presenters, basically, it's like I don't watch Soccer Aid because Ollie Mers is on it, and I just think it's. I think Soccer Aid is it's done for great, obviously it's a charity, but I mean, it defies logic how these Z-list celebrities get picked every year. I can't watch it. I mean, like, some of these people haven't been relevant since the 90s. But look, I'm not going to get into the Soccer Aid thing because that'll just go on and on and on. Just give what you can. It's for charity. Sticking with transfers, there's just also coming out of Germany from Plettigol as well, who was speaking about the OSIMHEN thing. Sabitzer, very unlikely to return to Bayern Munich. Really wants to stay at Manchester United. Now, look, that's not a reason to keep him, but he is very, 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 very happy at Manchester United. Very impressed with Ten Hag, the players, the setup. the stadium, the fans, and when I say stadium, I mean the atmosphere around the stadium. I mean, Old Trafford, I played at Old Trafford, been to Old Trafford many times, I'm sure many of you have. It is rotting, it is decaying, it is rusting, whatever your word. You know, the facilities in certain areas of the ground are disgusting, but you still walk on the pitch, you still walk into the stadium, and you still feel it, because it's like a church in a religious sense. If football is your religion, the history, the atmosphere, it does need massive amounts of work, but it's still an impressive place, and people are impressed by it. And Sabitzer clearly is as well. He wants to stay at the club, doesn't want to go back to Bayern Munich, would love to stay at Manchester United. But look, ultimately, do you keep Sabitzer? I wouldn't say I'm even 50-50, and I wouldn't even do a poll, because I think most people would say that they want to keep Sabitzer, but I think for me, I'm just quite relaxed about Sabitzer, in the sense that we don't need to make a decision yet, do we? We don't have to make a choice on Sabitzer at the moment, and I think that's the most important thing. So I really like him. I was really excited when we got him, and I've seen glimpses of him in a Man United shirt where I've gone, yeah, he's better than Fred, he's better than McTominay, he's somebody that can push Eriksen and Bruno. I think when you've got Sabitzer, Bruno and Eriksen, you don't need to do a hell of a lot in relation to your attacking number 8, 10 midfielders, but we desperately need somebody who can do the Casemiro role. If you said to me, we're keeping Sabitzer and we're buying Caicedo, I'd go, happy days. Fonzie. That'll go way over people's heads. Monday, Sunday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. Saturday, what a day. Making all day with you. Anyway, forget Fonzie and the gang. I'd be very happy with Sabitzer and Caicedo as our midfield business, because you get 2. I wouldn't be happy if Sabitzer was the only midfielder we bought, because Sabitzer cannot play the Casemiro role. So I'm relaxed about Sabitzer. One concern I do have about Sabitzer, and I'll do this live on air, because I think it's a good point, and it was something I meant to do the other day and I had completely forgotten. So let's have a look at this. Sabitzer's injury history, because he's been at the club and he's been injured twice, and when you're only on loan at the club for 6 months, you really need to be staying fit. So it's not actually that bad. I look at his injury record. In the 2020 season, he had a knee injury, only 8 days. 2021, torn muscle fibre, 24 days. Calf problem in the same season. And then last season, he had a calf injury for 25 days and a muscular problem for 5 days. And then this season, he's had no injuries, apart from when he's been at Man United, which was an unknown injury for 8 days, and then this groin strain. So he actually isn't injury prone. I just think he's been a little bit unlucky in his time. So he's not an injury prone player. Andy Weatherall, you're a legend. Thanks for gifting a membership there. So look, I like Sabitzer. I thought he was fantastic against Sevilla. Hopefully he'll be available for this second leg as well. But I don't feel we need to make a decision at the moment. I don't like sitting on the fence. So I'll say I would love us to sign Sabitzer as long as we buy another midfielder that can play the Casemiro role. And I don't care who that is. As long as we get somebody that can do the Casemiro role, I don't mind keeping Sabitzer, because the massive problem that Man United have got is Fred can't do it, Sabitzer can't do it, McTominay can't do it, Eriksen can't do it, and Bruno can't do it. They can't do what Casemiro does. And there's nobody in the youth team that can do it either. You know, there's some cracking midfielders in the youth team, but they're not ready to do what Casemiro does at the level we need it to do. We are ridiculously focused on Casemiro. You've got to bring somebody in who can do that role. So whether we keep Sabitzer or not, we've got to bring somebody in who can do the Sabitzer role, not the Sabitzer role, the Casemiro role, and that to me is the most important thing when you're deciding what you want to do in this summer transfer window. Thanks everyone who's watching, by the way. Please do smash a like on the video and subscribe. I'm just trying to remember what day it is. It's Tuesday. I can't speak. It's Tuesday. I've got to stop doing that, actually. People are getting annoyed of me doing it. Just to give you, I like to... what's your thoughts on Kobe Mainu? I like Kobe Mainu. Look, it's a very big thing to say a young player is going to make it in the first team at Man United, because over the last 20 years, how many players have gone from the youth team to the first team and been good? Honestly, Rashford and Greenwood, for me, in recent years, are the only two that have gone from the youth team to the first team and have gone, they're exceptional. I know McTominay's done it. You know, that's an open debate we're not going to get into. But I like Mainu. I think he's an interesting talent. I've always liked Daniel Gore in the youth setup as well. I don't know whether he's going to play for Man United or Swansea. I don't know. Until they play for the first team, you just don't know. But the reality is, I mean, Garnacho, I don't want to tempt fate with Garnacho. I'm very excited about Garnacho, but I don't put Garnacho where Greenwood and Rashford are, because he's got to do it next season as well. But Garnacho is very exciting. But look, that shows in one way that our youth development has kicked on in the last few years, because if you go back 10 years before Rashford, how many young players did come through? Not of real quality. Not that many. I mean, you're talking about Cleverley and Welbeck. So, and they didn't really hit the first team as well as Rashford, Greenwood have, or even Garnacho, to be fair. So, we need to. My point is, we need to buy a really good quality defensive midfielder, because we've got nothing other than Casemiro, and you can't be a football club at any level. Look, if Everton get an injury to Idrissa Gueye, they've got options that can do that role, and they're a relegation team. If we get an injury or a suspension to Casemiro, we haven't got a CDM or a defensive-minded midfielder. That is shockingly bad for any Premier League football club, let alone a club that wants to take the step to being a title challenger or win trophies. We are completely bereft of options beyond Casemiro, so we've got to solve that issue this summer. It's a huge problem. But it's not unique to Ten Hag. We've spent the last 5 years talking about needing a holding midfielder. I mean, Casemiro literally solved a problem that we didn't want to solve for years. I mean, you could even take it back to 2006. We never really solved it after getting rid of Roy Keane. Michael Carrick became that, but he wasn't your typical sort of option, really. Could Ahmad be another? I really like Ahmad, says JT. Well, Ahmad's not from the youth setup technically. You know, we spent quite a lot of money for him from Atalanta, but I do think he will be a good player, and he will be given his option in the summer transfer window, as we know. What's Ahmad's position anyway, says Nishant. I mean, look, I think Ahmad's really interesting. A lot of people think he's a winger. We saw him play as a false nine against Wolves at the end of the season a couple of years ago, and he played it very, very well against a very physical back five. So I think Ahmad's a really interesting player who probably gets pigeonholed as a winger. But ultimately, I think Ahmad has the potential to be, you know, he's a little bit like Pellistri. I personally think Pellistri, if he was at Man City, and look, people are going to ridicule me for this, but I personally think that if Pellistri was at Man City, he'd get more game time and he'd be used like Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden and David Silva more. I think Pellistri as a winger is almost wasted, because I think he's actually a very technical, low centre gravity player in the mould of a Bernardo Silva. And I'm not saying Pellistri is Bernardo Silva, because Bernardo Silva, I think, is one of the best European attacking midfielders. But Ahmad could be that as well. I wouldn't say that Pellistri and Ahmad are exclusive wingers. I think they have the ability to be a little bit more of a number 10 as well. And that's what top quality wingers are anyway. A lot of wingers should be able to play as attacking midfielders as well. We've seen glimpses with Jadon Sancho. You know, Jadon Sancho centrally does work. But the other thing is you've got to be able to put the defensive work in. And Bernardo Silva may not be particularly physical or big, but he doesn't half put a shift in. And I think that obviously makes a big difference as well. Would you get Mane? Who said that? Viking Red. Get Mane. I think Sadio Mane is fantastic. We probably missed the trick by ignoring him at Southampton, and I remember doing a video saying I didn't want him. I'll put my hand up. You know, I can't get everything right. I get a lot wrong. I think we all do. That's life. I said that Van Dijk for 75 million was just a Dutch Chris Smalling, which actually, at the moment, Chris Smalling probably is better than him. But I think that Mane is fantastic, but if he was ever going to be a Man United player, it needed to be from Southampton. You don't take Sadio Mane from Bayern Munich when he's been at Liverpool for so long. He wouldn't come, and we should never, ever, ever expose ourselves to that sort of a snub. Emre Can, Thomas, welcome to the Members Club. Emre Can is a prime example. We looked like we might be going for Can at one point, and I remember us talking about him one summer and saying, yeah, we'd take him, and then he publicly came out and said, absolutely, I'd never go to Man United. I'm Liverpool through and through. So I just wouldn't expose yourself to any potential snub there. He's a Liverpool player, and Liverpool fans would be the same. You know, would Liverpool fans want to go and buy Paul Pogba? No, they wouldn't, because he's played for Man United. So some things are more important. I wouldn't go anywhere near Mane. Fantastic player, but his history at Liverpool, he wouldn't come to us. So, you know, we're Manchester United. You don't expose yourself to that. What do you think about James Ward-Prowse as a midfield option? Davil, I think James Ward-Prowse is a good player, but he's not an Arsenal player. He's not a Man United player. He's not a Chelsea player. He's not a Man City player. He's not a Liverpool player. He's an Aston Villa player. He's an Everton player. Maybe he's a Brighton player. And I'm not being disrespectful to those teams, but I think if he comes to Man United, he sits on the bench. If he goes to Arsenal, he sits on the bench. If he goes to Chelsea, he probably doesn't even make the bench. If he goes to Everton, he starts. If he goes to Brighton, he probably starts. If he goes to Villa, he probably starts. And I just think that modern football sometimes overhypes players. When I was growing up, you had midfielders like Rob Lee at Newcastle, Matt Le Tissier at Southampton, Gavin Peacock was another one who was at Chelsea. Really good midfielders who were probably at their level. But I think everybody, you know, is James Maddison, here's one for you. James Maddison, to me, is no better than what Rob Lee was at Newcastle all those years ago. He's a very good midfielder, but I don't think James Maddison's a Man City player or a Man United player or an Arsenal player. Probably a Spurs player, but Spurs aren't a top 4 club. So I think we sometimes overhype players. Look, if I want a midfielder, I don't want James Ward-Prowse and I don't want James Maddison. I want Frankie de Jong. I want Casido. You know, I want Bellingham. I want the best of the best. I think we've messed around as a football club for too many years buying players that aren't Man United players. With all due respect, you know, and I hate doing it because it's always him, but we paid £80 million for Harry Maguire. I don't want to pay £70 million for James Maddison because I just think it's another Harry Maguire. I don't think he's anywhere near the level of a Bruno Fernandes, of an Odegaard, of a Kevin De Bruyne. He's just not at that level. He's very good, but he's not at that level. But Trevor says Maddison's a top player. I don't agree. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a top 4 player. Who's he benching in the top 4? He ain't benching Odegaard. He ain't benching Bruno, and he ain't benching De Bruyne or Bernardo Silva. Probably starts for Newcastle, to be fair, because they haven't got that type of a player. But he ain't getting in at Man United. Absolutely no doubt about that. I don't know why I've got that on. Good discussion though. I like those sort of discussions. They're good. I love those sort of discussions actually. Barry says that Gravenberch is going to Liverpool. Maddison starts for Liverpool, says Rodney. I'd probably start for Liverpool at the moment. I mean, Liverpool haven't got a midfield, so yeah, he probably does start for Liverpool. But Maddison's better on the ball than Bruno. I think, yeah, I'm going to say it now. I think James Maddison's massively overhyped. I really do. I like him as a player. I wanted him to go to the World Cup, but I think he's massively overhyped. And I think he is absolutely quintessentially the definition of British bias. I don't think if Maddison's Portuguese, I'd argue he wouldn't even get in their squad. So absolutely no way is James Maddison on the same page as Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes has created more chances this season, I think, than anybody. It's just complete enough. That's just, I mean, it doesn't even wind me up. It makes me smile. James Maddison's better on the ball than Bruno Fernandes. Yeah. Is that why? You put Bruno Fernandes in Leicester's team, they'd be mid-table. That's the difference between Bruno Fernandes and James Maddison. You put Bruno Fernandes in that Leicester side, they ain't getting relegated. That's the influence Bruno Fernandes has on a team. So if you want to know the difference between James Maddison and Bruno Fernandes, Leicester fans, if you had Bruno, you wouldn't be in a relegation fight, because that's the influence he has on a team. You know, it wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. Would you take Ruben Neves, says JT? I think he's an interesting player. I wouldn't be surprised. We've been linked to him for years. I wouldn't say no. I have a preference on what I would want. I am going to be on Twitch today, Liam, because it's the Champions League final. Manchester United against Real Madrid. If you're interested in Twitch, watch out this afternoon. It's going to be big. I've got an FA Cup final as well. I bottled the league, but yeah, we're ready to go. Thanks everyone for watching. Really enjoyed the show this morning. Smash a like on the video and subscribe. We'll be back. We were definitely doing a 7 o'clock show tonight, because I'm doing 8 o'clock Chelsea Real Madrid on That's Football. But we may well have a 2 o'clock show as well. I need to go and take something from a cold. Speak to you all in a bit. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Don't have a great day. Have a great day. Don't have a good day.